Hello guys, welcome to DrNightStare. I know you guys come here to relax and take a nap. So before we go, please hit like and subscribe. By the way, also tell me what time and where you guys listening from. Alright then. The profound loneliness of December 31st settled deep within Leo. He was 32, a tech support specialist for a data analytics firm that he suspected would replace him with AI by the spring. He'd been single for so long that his relatives had stopped asking about girlfriends and now inquired solely about his general health. That evening, Leo sat slumped on the couch in his small city apartment, the distant pops of premature fireworks punctuating the silence. The television blared a New Year's Eve special, a sickeningly saccharine spectacle of forced optimism where perspiring singers promised a magically different year. He loathed it. He despised their contrived hope. His laptop rested on his lap, a portal to aimless internet browsing. Then it appeared. Not an intrusive ad, but a simple link on an obscure productivity forum he frequented. A cruel irony, given his pervasive procrastination. The link bore a stark declaration and a January Manifesto. Become who you were born to be. He clicked. The site was minimalist, almost brutally stark. Black background, white sans serif font. No ads, no stock photos of blissful individuals stretching into yoga poses. No empty promises of quick wealth. There was only a text field numbered 1 to 5 and a prominent button labeled Sing in Contract. At the very top, a phrase echoed, "Change hurts. Permanence kills." What are you willing to sacrifice for the new you? Chloe, Leo, sufficiently drunk and desperate, found it profoundly poetic. He glanced at his belly, a soft bulge over his belt. He noted his fingernails, bitten raw to the quick, a nervous habit that had plagued him since childhood. He recalled Marina, his ex, telling him he was too emotionally closed off, just before the final, definitive slam of her door. This year, he vowed, would be different. Truly different. He would change. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began to type. His sincere, simple wishes for the coming year flowed onto the screen. 1. I want to stop biting my nails for good. CA Classic resolution. 2. I want a smile that compels people to notice me. His teeth were yellowed, and he rarely smiled with an open mouth, so a radiant smile felt crucial for his self-esteem. 3. CA I want to lose 15 kilograms and fast. CAA he had no patience for gym routines. 4. To the A's, I want to have an open heart to the world. His ex's criticism still stung his ego. 5. I want to kill the old failed Leo forever. He reread the list. It looked less like resolutions and more like a battle plan. He clicked Sign, Contract. The screen flickered once. There was no request for an email, no credit card details, no confirmation pop-up, just a single message that flashed for 2 seconds before the site went offline, returning a 404 error. The protocol has been initiated. Happy New Year. Leo closed his laptop, chuckled at his own gullibility, finished the last of the sparkling wine, and passed out on the couch moments before the countdown chimed through the apartment. See January 1st. Leo awoke with a parched mouth and a skull-splitting headache. The midday sun, a harsh intruder, pierced through the gaps in the blinds, assaulting his eyes. He rose, unsteady, and stumbled into the kitchen for water. As his hand closed around the glass, he felt something profoundly wrong. The texture of the glass felt strangely alien against his fingertips. He looked at his hand. A scream tore from his throat, and the glass slipped, shattering on the linoleum, scattering water and razor-sharp fragments. His nails. They were gone. Not merely cut short, but utterly absent. Where the hard keratin plate should have been, there was only skin. Smooth, continuous, pink skin that enveloped the tips of his fingers, as if he were a plastic doll or an unborn child yet to develop them. Horrified, he brought his hand to his mouth. The sensation of his tongue gliding over the blind. Fingertips was nauseating. There were no edges. Nothing to bite. He ran to the bathroom. His feet. The same thing. His toes were unsettlingly smooth, like sausages. What in the world is this? He croaked at his reflection. His heart hammered. He tried to rationalize. An allergic reaction? A bizarre side effect of some sudden vitamin deficiency? Fungus? But there was no pain, no blood. The skin was perfectly healed, as if he had always been this way. The list. He remembered the list. Item 1. I want to stop biting my nails for good. C. Well, technically, it was now impossible to bite what no longer existed. He grabbed his phone to dial emergency services. But he paused. What would he say? Hello, my nails have disappeared. They would either mock him or commit him. He decided to wait. Perhaps it was a vivid, alcohol-induced lucid dream. He spent the rest of the day wearing gloves, deliberately avoiding his hands. The tactile sensation of picking up objects without the rigid support of nails was agonizing. Too soft, too vulnerable. See January 2nd. Leo woke with a peculiar lightness. Not a lightness of spirit, but of physical mass. He pushed himself up in bed, and as he swung his feet to the floor to stand, he lost his balance, pitching shoulder first onto the carpet. His left leg wouldn't respond. He looked down, expecting to see his tangled pajamas. The pajamas were there, but empty from the knee down. The panic was so absolute that his vision tunneled. He groped at his leg. His left thigh was present. His knee was there. But just below the patella, the leg simply ended. There was no blood, no gaping wound. The skin closed into a perfect, rounded, smooth stump, like the end of a sausage cut and perfectly healed years ago. No, 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 he whimpered, dragging himself backward until his back hit the wall. He pulled up the pant leg of his right leg. A substantial chunk of his calf was missing, as if someone had used a giant ice cream scoop, excavating the flesh and leaving only the tibia and fibula bones thinly sheathed in translucent skin. He touched his torso. A section of his back was gone. He could feel the cavernous void. Flesh was missing from his right arm. Crying hysterically, he crawled to the bathroom and, supporting himself on the sink, stepped onto the scale. The digital display blinked. 0.5 kgs. HE's take 0.5 kgs. Just 2 days prior, he had weighed 85.5 kgs. He had lost precisely 15 kilograms. Item 3. I want to lose 15 kilos fast. He vomited into the sink. This wasn't a diet. He was being sculpted. Someone, or something, was meticulously removing pieces of him to fulfill his wishes. Flesh, fat, bone, muscle, magically subtracted during sleep, cauterized by an invisible force. He tried to call the police. He dialed the emergency number. The call wouldn't connect. A synthetic voice spoke in his ear. The contract cannot be interrupted during the processing phase. Please wait for completion. He hurled the phone against the mirror, cracking the glass. He was trapped. Trapped in his apartment. Trapped within his diminishing body. He spent the day on the living room floor, a kitchen knife clutched in his hand, waiting for an intruder. No one entered. The horror was emanating from within. To January 3rd. He didn't sleep. He stayed awake, watching his own body, waiting for another piece to vanish. But exhaustion finally claimed him around 4,000 a.m. When he awoke at 9,000 a.m., his mouth throbbed. A sharp, searing pain in his cheeks and jaw. He tasted copper. He limped on his single leg to the cracked bathroom mirror. He screamed, but the sound was a gurgled, strangled noise. His cheeks, had they been torn? No. They had been remodeled. The skin at the corners of his mouth had been pulled back and fused near his ears. His lips were stretched in unbearable tension, exposing all his gums. He was smiling. A wide, fixed, maniacal smile, reminiscent of a twisted clown, but without the crude scars. It was anatomically impossible, yet it was there. And his teeth. His yellowed, crooked teeth had fallen out. He spotted some in the sink drain. In their place, new teeth were growing. White. as white as sanitary porcelain. And large. They were perfect, yes, but far too big for his mouth. They were predator teeth, designed to be seen from afar. They gleamed under the bathroom light. Item 2. I want a smile that forces people to look at me. He tried to close his mouth. He couldn't. His lips were now too short. His teeth would remain perpetually exposed. The air dried his gums, causing excruciating pain. He looked like a creature from a horror film. A one-legged, perpetually grinning demon. Tears streamed down his face in front of the mirror, but the smile never faltered. He was sobbing, his eyes swollen with dread, yet his mouth remained fixed in that grotesque rictus of eternal, white happiness. The dissonance between his inner torment and his outward expression was maddening. He began frantically searching his browser history. He had to find the site, he had to cancel. But the history was meticulously clean. He attempted to text his sister, pleading for help. When he typed, "Help, I need help," the letters on the screen spontaneously changed to, "I'm great. The process is wonderful." The contract controlled his outgoing data. It wouldn't allow him to spoil the surprise. He was isolated. A prisoner in a rapidly disintegrating tower of flesh. A January 4th. A sharp pain in his chest, not heartburn, not a heart attack, but a cold, precise cutting sensation, roused him before sunrise. He looked down. His shirt was open. The buttons had popped off. In the center of his chest, over his sternum, the skin was becoming transparent. No, not transparent. It was opening. Like the petals of a grotesque flower, the skin and pectoral muscle were slowly retracting to the sides, curling in on themselves. He wasn't bleeding. The edges of the wound were clean, shiny, and moist. The sternum bone cracked and split in half. The ribs pulled apart with a wet cracking sound, like green branches being forcibly bent. He screamed, writhing in bed, clutching the sheets with his nailless hands. The fixed smile on his face seemed to mock his agony. He could see his lungs inflating and deflating. They were pink and gray, and in the middle of them, beating frantically, was his heart. The tissue surrounding the heart began to dissolve. The organ was exposed, naked, vulnerable to the apartment's air. He could see the arteries, the blue veins, the yellow fat. He could see every terrified beat. See its item 4. I want to have an open heart to the world. The literal interpretation was a masterpiece of artistic cruelty. He felt the cold air touch the surface of his heart. Every beat was a fresh agony, scraping against the open edges of his ribcage. Any dust, any bacteria, any casual touch would be fatal. He was a living anatomical display. He dragged himself to the cleanest corner of the room. He grabbed rolls of plastic wrap, normally used for leftovers, and wrapped his own torso, sobbing as the plastic adhered to the exposed flesh and bone. He had to protect himself. He was far too open. He sat in the dark, listening to the wet thud of his heart beating against the plastic. There was one item left. The list had 5 items. He looked at the clock. It was 11:50 p.m. Day 5 was approaching. Item 5. I want to kill the old, failed Leo forever. The dread he had experienced in the preceding days was nothing compared to the glacial terror that flooded his veins in that moment. The other items were modifications. Tortures, yes, but modifications. The 5th item was a death sentence. Kill the old Leo. He grabbed the kitchen knife he kept by his side. If anyone came to kill him, he would take them with him. He dragged himself to the front door, the apartment's only entry point. He remained there, with his giant smile, his heart exposed beneath the plastic, his missing leg, his smooth hands clutching the knife handle. He waited. Midnight. Nothing happened. 1000 a.m. Still nothing happened. 1000 a.m. 3000 a.m. He eventually succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep, leaning against the door, praying the nightmare was over, that the literal interpretation had been metaphorical. This time. Saw January 5th. Leo woke to the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the lock. The sound emanated from behind his head. He was leaning against the door. The key was being inserted from the outside. His blood ran cold. He lived alone. Only he possessed a key. The spare was with his mother, who lived in another city. He recoiled, dragging his mutilated body across the floor, pointing the knife. The doorknob turned. The door opened softly. The hallway light spilled in, outlining a silhouette. A man entered. He wore an impeccable, tailored gray suit. Italian leather shoes gleamed. He closed the door gently behind him and turned to face Leo. The knife slipped from Leo's smooth hand, clattering metallically to the floor. The man was Leo, but not him. He possessed Leo's face, but refined. His skin glowed with health, a natural tan. He was lean, exactly 15 kilograms lighter than Leo's former self, but proportionally, athletically built. He smiled. The smile was wide, confident, with perfect white teeth that actually fit within his mouth. A magnetic smile. He glanced at Leo's hands on the floor. His hands had perfect, well-groomed nails. He placed a hand on his chest. Leo knew, instinctively, that his heart was protected by strong bones, but that he was emotionally charismatic, open, in a metaphorical sense. He was the new Leo, version 2.0, the finished product. And Leo? He looked down at his own shredded body on the floor. He wasn't the client. He was the raw material. He was the chrysalis. He was the chrysalis. He was the bio-waste left behind after the butterfly had emerged. The old, failed Leo. The new Leo walked toward him. He didn't appear disgusted. He had a look of pity, like someone regarding a fatally wounded animal that needed to be put out of its misery. "You were very brave," he said. His voice was Leo's, but without the stutter, without the insecurity projected and firm. "Thank you for the sacrifice. I'll take it from here." "Who are you?" Leo gurgled through his stretched smile. "I am what you asked for. I am the resolution." He crouched down. He crouched down. From his suit pocket, he produced not a weapon, but a thick, industrial black trash bag, and a roll of duct tape. "The contract was clear, Leo. For the new to be born, the old must die. Coexistence is not an option. It's a server space conflict in reality." He lunged. Leo tried to fight. He tried to scratch with his nailless fingers, tried to bite with his oversized teeth. But he was weak, mutilated, his heart exposed. The new Leo was strong. He pinned Leo easily. Leo felt his own hands, but strong close around his neck. It wasn't a strangulation born of anger. It was a shutdown. As his vision faded, the last thing Leo saw was his own face, perfect and beautiful, smiling at him as he was extinguished. Leo woke up. The alarm clock shrilled. 7:30 a.m. He sat up in bed. He took a deep breath. His lungs filled with air without pain. His chest was closed. His legs were both there. He ran to the mirror. He was lean. 70 kilograms, defined muscles. He opened his mouth. Perfect, white, aligned teeth. He looked at his hands. Impeccable nails. He felt an inner peace, a confidence he had never known, an open heart. He had done it. It worked. He was the Leo he had always dreamed of being. He donned his new suit. He had a job interview today, and he knew he would get it. He had a date with Marina later. He'd called her, and his voice was so charming, she'd readily agreed to see him. He walked to the kitchen to make coffee. He opened the cabinet under the sink to retrieve a new filter. Deep in the back, behind the cleaning products, was a black trash bag, large and heavy, meticulously wrapped in duct tape. It smelled like meat beginning to turn. He paused for a second. He looked at the bag. He felt a pang of memory, an echo of pain in his chest, a ghostly sensation of a torn smile. No, it must be his imagination. The old Leo was full of paranoia. He wasn't like that anymore. He closed the cabinet door. He grabbed his coffee, flashed his best smile at the hallway mirror, and stepped out to conquer his new year. After all, today was trash pickup day. He'd take the bag when he went down. Principal Anya Thorne's study felt like a cage, despite its sprawling size. I sat rigidly, my gaze fixed on my lap, trying to process the surreal nightmare my life at Blackwood Academy had become. Two silent guards loomed behind me, their presence a suffocating weight. Every subtle shift in my posture made them twitch, their eyes snapping to attention. I had arrived here seeking self-discovery, only to stumble into a student body consumed by a fanatical adherence to the zodiac. My eyes drifted to a faded astrology chart on the wall, where the Academy's most reviled sign had been violently scribbled out with permanent marker. Principal Thorne's study was an astrologer's paradise, cluttered and cozy in a disheveled way. Books and papers formed precarious towers, forgotten coffee mugs dotted surfaces, and star maps, stained with coffee rings, covered her laptop. Principal Thorne herself, a woman my mother's age, was a perpetually scowling shadow in the room. A projector cast shimmering constellations across the walls, bathing her face in an otherworldly light. I found myself lazily tracing Orion's path when her sharp voice sliced through my distraction. "Miss Vance." I flinched, snapping to attention, my cheeks burning. Orion's bright stars skimmed across her face, momentarily mesmerizing me with their ethereal beauty. "It was a mistake," I finally managed, the words catching in my throat. It wasn't a mistake, not really, but admitting the truth felt impossible. This academy, with its draconian zodiac rules, harbored a particular, inexplicable hatred for one sign. My gaze returned to the vandalized chart. The crossed-out symbol was unmistakable: Gemini. Growing up, I'd heard complaints about Pisces for being fish or Cancer for being crabs. But Gemini? The sign of the twins, ruling the vibrant summer months, its constellation a personal favorite. Yet here, it was an anathema. From my first days as a late admission, I'd witnessed the systematic mistreatment of Gemini students. I remembered a new boy, who seemed like a harmless class clown, introducing himself with a cheerful grin. During an icebreaker, or what I'd assumed was one, he'd shrugged. I think I'm a Gemini? Born on June 10th. A palpable chill descended. The girl beside him subtly scooted her laptop away. The rest of the class collectively exhaled, then turned, almost robotically, towards a shadowed corner of the room where 4 students hunched over their MacBooks. The professor's expression soured, his eyes darkening. "I think," he began, his voice strained, then seemed to collect himself. "You should go join your friends at the back." The Gemini boy looked baffled, a flicker of hurt in his eyes. The air crackled with unspoken judgment. I felt eyes on me too, the professor's wide and tense. He just shook his head. "I'm confused," the boy chuckled nervously, nearly jumping when a girl behind him kicked his bag. Is this some kind of joke? Now." The professor's voice was stiff, not even looking at him. "But it's just a star sign, right?" "I will not ask you again," the professor said, folding his arms. "Move to your designated seat, or you're out of my class." To my surprise, the boy complied, navigating the cringing students to join his assigned group in the back. I noticed then that the entire class had been segregated by their zodiac signs. Leos were at the front, flanked by Sagittarius and Libra. I initially believed it was an isolated eccentricity of that one class, but the obsession with the zodiac had infected the entire campus like a virulent disease. Grades and careers paled in comparison to astrological compatibility. Certain signs, like the Leos and Sagittarius, held faculty in their thrall, enjoying exclusive clubs and extra credit, while the rest of us were left to struggle. Geminis, however, were either mercilessly bullied or treated as if they carried a contagious affliction. It was 6th grade all over again, but with grown adults. In elementary school, I'd been proud of my Gemini sign, imagining a secret twin like Castor and Pollux. Serafina Davis, a Pisces, had once called me a two-faced bitch. I retaliated by calling her an ugly fish. But this was college. This was supposed to be different. Over the past few days, the initial disgust for Geminis had warped into fear. Students now actively avoided them, a wary look contorting every face, a look I now saw reflected in Principal Thorne's eyes. She was scared of me. Despite her authoritative facade, her finger nervously tapped a coffee mug, her gaze darting to the clock. She was waiting for something, her posture rigid, eyebrows furrowed deeper with each passing minute. "A mistake," she repeated my words, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Yes. I avoided her gaze, my clammy hands brushing against my jeans. What could I say? I hadn't wanted to associate myself with what I thought was a transient trend. But here I was, staring at an anonymous, crumpled letter in my fists, outing my true star sign. The crossed O's in the handwriting stood out. I had been masquerading as a Sagittarius, one of the coveted it signs. The letter felt like a physical blow. It screamed that I didn't belong, that because of a brainwashed hive mind, I was to be feared. Who sent this? I demanded, squeezing the paper. Dearest Principal, I would like you to know of a traitor amongst you, a Sagittarius by the name of Vance, who is in fact a Gemini. I am so sorry for ruining your day. Anon. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Principal Thorne's glare was a laser beam fixed on my forehead. If looks could kill. I don't know what to say, I choked out. She hummed. You can start by explaining yourself. She wasn't kidding. Miss Vance, I am horrified that you would disguise yourself as a Sagittarius. Her lip curled. As one myself, I should have sensed that our energy was wrong, polluted with your presence. But I let my guard down. I slammed the letter onto her desk. This woman was utterly insane. Who sent this? I repeated, my voice sharper. That is none of your concern, Principal Thorne said. You lied, Miss Vance, about my zodiac sign. I sucked in a breath. It's really not a big deal. Her eyes darkened. As you will discover, Miss Vance, it is extremely important that we know where every Gemini is. Her gaze flicked to her MacBook, especially when certain measures have been put in place. Measures? I straightened. What kind of measures? Her lip curled. You are a late arrival. It is your fault for not arriving on time. You're kidding, I scoffed. Enough was enough. Students behaving like this was one thing, but grown adults? I leaned forward, testing her boundaries. She flinched. Was it a bad experience? She blinked. I don't understand. A bad experience you had, I repeated. With a Gemini. Weeks of repressed anger bubbled to the surface. Because that is all it is, what you're all unhealthily obsessed with. I spoke through gritted teeth. They're just stars. They don't mean anything to anyone, except children. Miss Vance, see? I traced the Gemini constellation mapped on her desk, poking each static light. It was ironic that it was there. I jabbed at Castor and Pollux, then Alhena. I gestured to Orion on the wall. Stars. They're just stars. Dead and dying planets, or, if you're religious, your long-dead relatives. Whatever. I pointed at the map under her MacBook, and Principal Thorne flinched again, angling away from me. She leaned back as if I were contagious. One of the guards stepped forward, but she shook her head, maintaining a professional, albeit strained, smile. There is no need, Principal Thorne said sharply, and the guards retreated. Miss Vance is understandably upset. She cleared her throat. Please vacate your current residence room and move into the forsaken hall across campus, where we house Geminis without rooms. She stood before I could reply. I don't expect to see you in my study again. I grabbed my bag, rising. You're not expelling me? Her lip twitched. We do not suspend Gemini students, Miss Vance. But what if I want to leave? Because of the measures in place. A warm, unsettling sensation coiled in my throat, but the guards were already politely ushering me out. Principal Thorne's words echoed in my mind until I was halfway across campus, breathless and regretting every defiant word. She had given me a warning and an order. Leave my current dorm immediately and move into the Forsaken Hall, a crumbling, large structure that used to be student housing. Bars on the windows, a broken door. No way was I staying there. Couch crashing with a friend sounded infinitely better. Lila, a Leo, always insisted she didn't care about star signs. Rich, coming from a Leo, considering she embodied the full Leo experience. I was planning to sneak into her room later that evening. We were cross-legged on the floor, eating takeout, when the announcement blared over the intercom. Starting from 8 p.m., please lock ALL Geminis in their rooms. It is upon us. Lila froze, her eyes widening. Until then, she had been unusually quiet, making me think she was just tired. She sent me a sleepy smile and said she was getting beer from the kitchen. What I didn't expect was for her to return wielding one of her mother's butcher knives. I recoiled, terrified by the look in her eyes. Her whole body trembled, fingers white around the handle. Her face was contorted by a feral fear I couldn't comprehend. "Lila," I bit back a cry. "Hey, it's me. It's Aurora. Get out." She sobbed, twisting towards the door. "Please, I don't want to hurt you." She waved the knife wildly. I raised my arms, my heart hammering. "You have 15 minutes," the voice on the intercom drawled. Lila's expression hardened. "I repeat, please lock ALL Geminis inside their rooms immediately and find a safe place. This warning will expire at 5 a.m. 8 hours from now." A sudden bang outside sent my fight or flight instincts into overdrive. Doors slammed, footsteps pounded. My eyes were fixed on the blade in Lila's hand. They were serious. Principal Thorne had indeed turned an entire campus against one star sign. Lila's frightened eyes met mine. I lowered my arms. "Wait, are you going to stab me?" I took a slow step back. "Because I was born in May?" I couldn't help a bitter laugh. "You told me you didn't care about the zodiac. You said all of this was BS. So, why now?" Another step, and she squeaked. "Do you want to fit in, Lila? Are the other Leos making you do this?" She didn't respond, and my anger flared. Lila didn't know why she was afraid of me. Her head had been filled with lies. I raised my arms in mock surrender. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Lila, I'm not going to hurt you." "When have I ever?" Tears stung my eyes. I could hear screaming outside, Geminis being attacked and locked up. I risked another step back, and her grip on the knife changed, ready to strike. "You are brainwashed," I said slowly. "Principal Thorne wants you to be scared. She's crazy, Lila." "Delusional. She has some insane vendetta against Geminis, and she's punishing us." Lila choked out a cry. "Last month," she spoke through sobs, "one of you got into my room." She shook her head rapidly, squeezing her eyes shut. "Just leave," she squeaked. "I'm sorry, Aurora. I'll explain, I promise. But you need to find someplace else, and it can't be here. It can't be tonight." She smiled, but her lips were strained, eyes wide with terror. When I moved to reassure her, she jumped back like a deer. She was utterly terrified of me. "Lock yourself up," my friend said softly, and I knew I had lost her. "But don't hurt yourself. They can climb through the windows and sense light. They follow it. So make sure to turn them off and stay down." Her expression darkened. "Can you promise me something?" I found myself nodding dizzily. Lila squeezed her eyes shut. "Don't look up." My gut twisted into knots. "What?" Her words struck a chord, but she was already dropping the knife and gently pushing me through the door. I was shoved into the hallway, my bags thrown at my face as alarms began to blare, red lights pulsing down the corridors. I saw shadows darting in and out of rooms, others being forcibly dragged inside, while retreating figures made for the elevators. A boy was violently pulled out by a girl and thrown to the ground. In that moment, I stopped seeing students, kids. I saw wild animals, crawling backward on their hands and knees, eyes darting for an escape. A girl ran into me, dropped to her knees, then catapulted into a sprint, only to be caught by 3 guys who dragged her away, kicking and screaming. I had no choice. It was 7:50 p.m. when I found myself standing before the forsaken hall, alarms still ringing in my ears. The dorm looked more like a decaying boarding house. The night felt eerily still, a half moon peeking through the clouds. Something was glued to the front door, a simple white sheet of paper. On it, scrawled in permanent marker, was "No" in bold letters. The crossed O was familiar. 5 minutes, the intercom screeched. In my panic, I knocked 3 times. "Hello?" I banged again. "Hey, can someone let me in?" My star sign tangled in my throat when a crash sounded behind me. I twisted to see a group of students dragging 2 bound and gagged figures, hauling them into a car trunk. My stomach lurched. I turned back to knock, but my fist met something warm. A shadow stood in the doorway, golden light bleeding around him. I could barely make out his face, just a mop of reddish curls. He tugged the paper off the door and held it out. The handwriting was unmistakable. "No means no," he said, and moved to slam the door. I quickly wedged my heel in the way. He tried to shut it on my foot, and in my panic, I shoved it back at him. The guy sputtered but didn't try again. I kept my guard up. You told Principal Thorne about me, I hissed. Did we go back to 6th grade? He snorted. You can talk. More screams echoed behind us. I resisted the urge to slip past him, but he shoved me back, quick as a whip. What? The shadow paused, then stepped into the light. I glimpsed narrowed eyes and freckles. I tried to push past, but he stood stubbornly in the way. His eyes were hidden by scuffed Ray-Bans. Ah, yes, the traitor, he said, as if he'd rehearsed this moment. Hiding in Sagittarius, thinking we wouldn't notice. He cocked his head. How's that working out for you? I heard laughter behind him. Looking closer, I noticed something metallic clamped around his wrist. Was he chained up? Traitor? I managed. He nodded, a grin spreading across his face. The secret Gemini, he said, making a huge show of blocking my way. You're actually famous around here. We turned your room into a relaxation lounge, so unfortunately. He drew out the A like he was auditioning for a villain. There's no room at the inn, dude. His lips curled into a spiteful smile. Behind me, another crash echoed. Ice shot down my spine. I couldn't bring myself to turn and witness more brutality. The guy stiffened, but if he was scared, he didn't show it. He had too much pride. He hiked his glasses up his nose, revealing eyes shadowed by an eerie glow spreading across his pupils. For a moment, I thought I saw hurt crumple his expression, but it was instantly replaced by a surprisingly convincing facade. His gaze followed mine to another student being mercilessly dragged across the parking lot. When I turned back to him, his expression had darkened. He slid his glasses back into place with emphasis. I swore this guy thought he was in a play. Have fun locking yourself up, he said, saluting me with 2 fingers before stepping back. Another jingle, and he flinched. This time, I saw it clearly. A rusted chain wrapped around his ankle and right wrist. He noticed me staring, and his lips curled into a scowl. Jasper stepped behind the door, clearly embarrassed. This is your 2-minute warning, the intercom blared, still loud even this far away. Hearing it, he gently kicked my foot out of the way, and I almost fell. I could hear voices as I shuffled back. I checked my phone, 7,580 p.m. Fuck. Wait, I managed to hiss. He stopped, letting out a sigh. It wasn't hard to just accept your star sign, he grumbled. The rest of this school are psychos, but we take care of our own. It's a star sign, I gritted out. Why are you going along with this? His jaw clenched. You should go, he hesitated. The top floor is usually safe. Head to the upper sanctuary restroom and lock yourself up. You're fucking insane. A part of me hoped he was just trying to scare me, that he'd drag me insane, that he'd drag me inside at the last moment. But no, this kid was really abandoning me to the unknown. The guy shrugged. Yeah, he shot me a grin. Bye, he said, slamming the door a little too hard in my face. Asshole, I yelled, kicking the door. You shouldn't have sided with the Leos. You shouldn't have sided with the Leos. He rebutted from inside. Why did you do that? Another male voice hissed. Because she's a traitor. A girl joined in. Aren't you being a little too harsh? Gee, nope. She can sit out there and rot. I left them to argue and made my way back onto campus. 7,059 p.m. Bathroom. That was all I could think of. I started towards the grand atrium when movement flashed in the corner of my eye. I saw them pouring out from campus, illuminated in brilliant orange from the torches in their hands. Leos. I recognized several faces from my classes. They moved as one, a large group heading across campus toward the clearing in the Whispering Grove. They wore pajamas, normal clothes, like they were going to hang out. But something in the air, prickling my skin, told me otherwise. I ducked, mapping a way to get into the grand atrium without being caught. If I could get to the door and make a clean break through the dining commons, I could dive into the upper sanctuary restroom next to the elevator. I dropped to my knees, attempting to crawl, when I saw her. The bright red hair was a giveaway, her bobbing ponytail frenzied as she joined the others. Lila. Another frantic look at my phone. 8,002 p.m. I didn't expect her to see me. She was looking around frantically, unlike the others whose eyes were set forward. It looked like she was searching for a way out, staggering over uneven ground. Then her eyes found mine. Initially, Lila looked relieved. Then her gaze went to the sky, flicking back to me. She strayed back, then stumbled over, pulling something from her jeans pocket. It was a much sharper knife, the blade glinting under the moonlight cast across the grounds. "Tell me your name," she said in a squeak. "I need to know it's you." I had half a mind to question her before I remembered the Gemini boy, Jasper, chained up. "Aurora," I gasped out. I'm Aurora." Lila hesitated. She twisted around, scanning the night, then turned back to me. Her frenzied eyes searched mine. "What is my most embarrassing story?" "What?" In 2 strides, she held the knife to my throat, her hand trembling. The steel was cold, and I had no doubt she wouldn't hesitate to press deeper. "Say it, Aurora." Word for word. Behind her, the main group of Leos was gone, with only some stragglers left. I nodded slowly, trying to ignore the blade digging into my skin. This was my new normal. You had your period in your boyfriend's parents' new car," I whispered. "You still have nightmares about it." Her expression crumpled with relief, and she dropped the knife. "How about mine?" I urged her. Lila surprised me with a quiet laugh. "You barfed tacos all over your crush on your first date," she choked out, "and he never talked to you again." I started to speak, but Lila tugged off her jacket, wrapping it around my eyes. At first, I fought back, but then her hands, her fingernails, dug into the bare flesh of my arms. Her touch was reassuring as she dragged her hands up my arms and grasped my shoulders. "I told you not to look up," her voice came out in an annoyed hiss. I didn't. I bit back a cry when she dug her nails in further. "What's happening? I'll explain later." "How can you guys tell who is a Gemini?" I whispered. "I don't get it." Lila didn't respond for a moment. "Your eyes," she whimpered. "It's in your eyes," she whimpered. "It's in your eyes." "What do you mean by that?" "Just stay quiet, okay?" Lila pulled me to my feet, and I staggered blindly, trying to balance myself. "I'll take you to the bathroom," she breathed, shoving me forward. "But if you tell anyone I helped you, I won't." I tripped over something, almost falling. The further we went, the more I could sense something, light. It started as a pinprick behind my eyes, then spread, light bleeding through the material of Lila's jacket. There was one bright spot of light, then another, and another, and another. Speckled illuminations like glitter illuminating the night. "Closer," they told me. I followed them almost giddily, watching them burn through Lila's jacket. When the sound of thundering footsteps sliced through me, I turned my head, trying to sense where it was coming from. "What's that?" I didn't realize I was laughing until manic giggles spurted from my lips. It was like being high, my thoughts bleeding into cotton candy. Suddenly, all I wanted was to see the lights. They felt so far away, and yet also like I could reach them, plucking them straight out of the sky. I laughed again, my body a puppet as I reached out and tried to catch them in my palm. "I said be quiet," Lila whisper shrieked. "I am. I was curious about the light. It was so bright, and I was missing out on fully taking it in." I stumbled again, my footsteps tangled. I didn't hear the voice until it was in my head, a whisper telling me to pull away the blindfold. It was choking me, suffocating my thoughts, and filling me with a taste of her. I saw it, just a glimpse dancing across my peripheral vision. I had my fingers clawing into Lila's jacket, ready to rip it off, when someone else did it for me. "Leo, what are you doing out here?" The voice was familiar, but it was being drowned out. By its light, its song. "I'm locking her up," Lila said shakily. Darkness made way for light, and I blinked rapidly. I could sense my head tipping back, and then Lila's fingers in my hair, trying to shove my head down. Blinking rapidly, I saw Principal Thorne and my best friend's pale face. And then I saw the stampede suffocated in shadow. Silhouettes passing me, ethereal light illuminating otherwise vacant eyes. The lights resembled stars themselves, dancing through the night. It was the same light that was seeping into me. It felt cozy and warm, already ignited inside them. I could tell who they were from their attempts to lock themselves up. I glimpsed handcuffs around wrists, makeshift ropes still clinging to arms and ankles, duct tape over mouths. When my gaze followed the horde, I caught sight of a cuffed ankle, a stray chain trailing behind him. Jasper, the boy who had locked me out. He moved slowly, like a zombie. His glasses were awkwardly placed on the top of his head, eyes drowned by that light. I caught a slight wrinkle in his brow. When the others marched forward, he stumbled back for a moment. Was he pretending to be part of the horde? He was a good actor, perfectly mimicking the others. His head was tipped back, arms by his sides, eyes forward, unblinking. His gaze flickered to me, lips mouthing 5 single words. Morse, do not fucking look up. But I couldn't not fucking look up. The light was teasing me, seeping into me like honey. It wasn't moonlight. I could glimpse the crescent glowing under the clouds. Geminis. They were bathed in it, a swimming glow I wanted to dive into. All of them. Where were they going? Unlike the Leos, their expressions were blank as they staggered along, akin to a crowd of zombies. I remembered not being able to concentrate on the Geminis. Something was holding on to me, winding its way into my brain. I felt it reach directly into the back of my head, phantom fingers taking me into its grasp. I didn't mean to look up. I tipped my head back, drinking in the sky above me and the night that suddenly felt alive. In the corner of my eye, Jasper was grabbing his friends, pulling them into the trees. The Gemini horde stopped suddenly, heads tipping back, glowing eyes following suit. I blinked twice. Lila was already covering my eyes, and I wrenched her hands away so I could see clearly. I could feel it, sense it, consuming me, filling my thoughts with a lulling fog. Aurora! Lila's eyes found mine, and she dropped to her knees, like she was scared of me. I remembered her lips had formed the words in breathy sobs. Don't look. Before she could reach up, I blinked again, and this time it was a longer one. I started toward something. It was there. I just had to reach as high as I could. Then I would be able to touch it. Starry eyes surrounded me, but I don't remember being scared. Lila's cry rattled in my skull as I felt my body lurch on its own, driven by something else, a sentient thing inside me. I could feel my mind filling with fog. It told me to go to sleep, and I did. When I came to, it was no longer night. Artificial white light buzzed above me. The first thing I felt was something wet oozing down my chin. Then, cool porcelain pressed against my cheek. I was in an upper sanctuary restroom stall, my head stuck down a toilet bowl. But it was different from waking up hungover. I felt filthy. My body was aching, a striking pain rippling across the back of my head. When I lifted my neck slightly, a snapping sound made me jump, like my bones were popping back into place. My memory was gone, my thoughts a whirlwind lost to the dark. I could still see Lila's face illuminated in that startling light. The shadowy horde around me, starry eyes burning into me. Then there was nothing. The familiar ice-cold grays of porcelain greeted me when I pried my eyes open. There was something in my mouth, and I spat it out, expecting stale vomit. What I wasn't expecting was a wet piece of flesh to splash down into the bowl. It took me several seconds to realize the toilet bowl I had my head down was not empty. In the flickering light from the broken fixture above me, I saw the glistening red first, spattered on the lid, and when I looked down, on the floor too, staining my knees. And then I saw all of it, the bulging, slimy red mess sticking from the bowl. I lurched back, and something was stuck at the back of my throat. I reached into my mouth, cringing, and pulled out what looked like a mauled finger, skinned of flesh. There were only spiky pieces of bone fragments clinging to shredded muscle. Something inhuman croaked from my lips, and I slammed my hands over my mouth, my gut twisting. I looked up, red. I looked down, more red, vivid, wet, and recent. I was covered in dirt and grass stains, my legs bloodied and bruised, half of my hair ripped out. The walls around me were the same shade, glistening, pooling, disgusting red, dripping and staining every surface. The lumpy red mass sticking from the toilet bowl suddenly looked less like a mass the more I was looking at it, blinking through the blinding light. At some point, I screamed, heaving up the rest, wet globules of fat spilling from my mouth. There was a head in the toilet bowl, stuck right under, like I'd been trying to hide the evidence. The head didn't look like a head, half of its skull crushed. But I could still make out familiar features. Eyes still wide open, lips frozen in what looked like a scream. Lila. Oh God, fuck, I killed my best friend. I'm still sitting here. I can't bring myself to move. Normal academy life still goes on outside, and I can't understand how. I found myself back at the Forsaken Hall a few hours ago. It was locked, but there was a small key wrapped in some paper. I was forced to give you this, Vance. Don't touch my stuff. You're sharing with Elena. Don't think this means any of us trust you. Welcome to the madhouse. Coming in? The voice startled me. I twisted around, and there he was, Jasper, the asshole Gemini. I took pleasure in walking away, dumping both the key and the note in the trash. I asked this as a Gemini, preferably on campus, but this goes for all of you. Did any of you kill and eat someone last night with no memory of doing so? I'm starting to think the Gemini constellation is something more than a group of stars after all. I think it's alive. Ethan slumped into his work chair, a sigh of relief escaping him. The city's mundane hum was a comforting balm after the unsettling strangeness of his recent camping trip. A normal shift at the Comet Lanes in Northwood, fixing the temperamental pin setters, was just what he needed to ground himself. These machines, with their intricate dance of clearing and resetting pins, were treacherous beasts demanding utmost respect. A fact hammered home by countless safety certifications and near misses. It had been a brutal shift. The Evening League, a sprawling affair that commandeered nearly 2/3 of their 36 lanes, had been relentlessly demanding. Some calls, like a sluggish ball return, were simple. Others, like a total blackout, meant a perilous climb onto and often into the machine itself. Manual reversals, freeing stubborn pin jams from the deck. These were exhausting, body-wrenching tasks. There had been too many of them, driving away any lingering, creepy thoughts of the woods. The league had finally, mercifully, ended. Ethan's feet throbbed, and his knees sang a painful chorus. One last machine, on lane 23, had chosen the final roll of the final game to black out, so it had been deprioritized. Time passed slowly, the hall gradually emptying as closing hour approached. He was finally out on a smoke break, sharing a quiet moment with his manager, Frank, and one of the cooks, when Frank remembered lane 23. Ethan offered a weary wink and a double gun gesture, a relic of an older generation, assuring Frank he'd handle it. Back inside, he made his way to the silent machine, locking it out from the rear panel. He began the familiar process of winding down the belt with the clutch wheel, emptying all the chutes of their resident pins. It was then he spotted it, a single pin, stubbornly wedged deep within the gears. His body ached, but his mind focused. He climbed out again to grab his sturdy gloves and the medium-sized crowbar. Back inside the machine's metal guts, he began to gently, patiently, work to dislodge the rogue pin. The moment the pin came free, a sickening thrumming vibrated through the metal around him. Panic seized Ethan. Lane 23, impossibly, had come to life. He was under the deck, in the heart of the beast. Time stretched, his mind screaming against the impossible reality. He scrabbled wildly, trying to extricate himself from the heavy metal triangle that formed the pin deck's base, when he heard the ominous click. He'd passed into the camera zone. The cycle had been triggered. The rake swooped in, a massive metal arm sweeping through, catching his forearms and the toes of his boots. He was being dragged back, deeper under the deck. He used the momentum, hopping forward as the rake began its backward sweep. But the deck itself was descending, a monstrous metal slab, and his legs were still trapped beneath it. Distantly, he heard the crackle of his radio, Frank's voice yelling his name. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, he slid his legs sideways, twisting them into the narrow gutter, barely clearing the crushing descent of the deck. Hands were suddenly under his armpits, strong and urgent, pulling him out. It was Frank, his face a mask of terror. But the machine was cycling again, the rake once more trying to pull Ethan back into its maw. Frank yelled again, grappling with Ethan, catching one arm as Ethan instinctively tried to crab walk away from the machine's reach. Even as the rake tugged, the massive deck was coming down for another cycle. In a final desperate act, Ethan thrust his pointer and pinky fingers, forked like a devil's sign, at the machine's electrical box. He fixed his gaze on a specific screw-in fuse and screamed, "Bunderfucking Bandersnatch." Frank gave a mighty heave, pulling Ethan clear just as sparks erupted from the electrical box, followed by a loud, violent pop. The machine died with a final cough of smoke and the sharp metallic tang of ozone. Frank helped him to his feet. They stood on lane 23, two figures frozen in the eerie silence, staring at each other, shaking, unable to speak. Finally, Frank found his voice, a raw whisper. "It was shut down from the front," he said, his eyes wide. "And locked out in the back," Ethan replied, his voice equally hoarse. Together, they walked to the back of lane 23, confirming with their own eyes that the main power switch was indeed off, with a padlock firmly preventing it from being turned on. They then double-checked the computer system at the front desk. It too confirmed the lane was offline. They finished closing in a numb, wordless collaboration, tacitly agreeing to skip the incident report. While Frank tallied the night's earnings, Ethan meticulously wrote out a detailed report for the supervising mechanic, carefully framing it as a severe electrical malfunction. Frank usually hailed a rideshare, but Ethan insisted on driving him home. They stopped at a convenience store, and Ethan picked up a 4-pack of tall boys. Over those beers, in the quiet safety of Frank's kitchen, Ethan finally recounted the bewildering events of his camping trip. Frank, a man of practicalities, admitted he didn't believe in such things, yet simultaneously confessed he had no reason to doubt a word Ethan had said. With Frank's permission, they agreed to open the Comet lanes early the next day. Ethan had a cleansing to perform, starting and ending at lane 23, to purge the strange energy clinging to the place. The supervising mechanic was, predictably, furious the next morning, but he ultimately blamed the machine, citing a cascade of electrical failures. He quadruple-checked every circuit, every wire, before clearing lane 23 for service. Thankfully, the lingering scent of incense had dissipated long before he arrived. It began, always, with me and Chloe materializing in David's dimly lit bedroom whenever the icy grip of sleep paralysis claimed him. Chloe would inevitably settle herself, a silent, weighty presence directly on his chest, while I'd find myself looming, a menacing shadow, in the far corner of the room. It was a role I detested, a grim charade we were both forced into without warning or consent. The sheer mortification of it all was palpable whenever we'd cross paths with David in the light of day, perhaps at the local coffee shop or passing each other on the street. There were so many unspoken questions, so much awkwardness, that I never quite managed to voice my own confusion and discomfort. Chloe felt it too. This involuntary intrusion into David's nightmares was beyond our control. Each time we appeared in his room during those paralyzing moments, we would, to our own internal horror, contribute to his terror. It was as if the paralysis itself dictated our actions, drawing us into a macabre performance we couldn't halt. Then, one peculiar afternoon, David extended an invitation for Chloe and me to join him for dinner at the Midnight Diner. It was an unsettling sensation, being invited somewhere by David, rather than simply materializing in his space against our will. He had reserved a quiet corner booth, and as we picked at the food he'd ordered, a thick tension hung between us. I was certain he intended to confront us, to demand an explanation for our involuntary nightly appearances. "I was convinced I was just doom-scrolling the other day," David began, his voice low, and we both leaned in, hesitant. "Scrolling through endless clips of truly awful things." But then it hit me. It wasn't just mindless doom-scrolling. I was having an epiphany, a stark realization of all the terrible, horrifying things unfolding in the world. We ate in strained silence for a few more moments, the clinking of cutlery, the only sound. Then David continued, stating simply that he had done something without reason. Chloe, ever the pragmatist, interjected firmly, "But everything we do must have a reason, David. No one is allowed to do things without reason." David didn't seem to hear her. He just reiterated, "What I thought was just endlessly scrolling through evil was actually me having an epiphany, truly seeing all the evil in the world." Chloe and I made to leave, the conversation growing increasingly bizarre, but David's voice cut through the air, sharp and desperate. "You two appear in my room every single time I have sleep paralysis. You owe me your attention." So, we stayed. I extracted organs from a cow, and then I extracted organs from a human, David confessed, his eyes wide and unblinking. And I put the cow's organs inside the human, and the human's organs inside the cow. I did it for absolutely no reason at all. Chloe and I recoiled in utter revulsion. The sheer, senseless brutality of his act, committed for no discernible motive, turned our stomachs. The next time David succumbed to sleep paralysis, Chloe and I found ourselves in his bedroom once more. But this time, we weren't alone. A new, grotesque figure stood by the foot of his bed, the very man whose organs had been so cruelly swapped with those of a farm animal. Clara's first apartment wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The air in the narrow flat above the dusty tome bookstore always carried a faint scent of mildewed paper and forgotten things, and the decor was definitely vintage in the worst possible way. But it was steps from her university campus and the cafe where she worked, and the rent was laughably low. Her parents, naturally, detested it. They called it a glorified broom closet and worried about the lack of sunlight. True, it was cramped, nestled between the roof and the ceiling of the shop below, with only one small skylight, but the price was unbeatable. Clara had optimistically hoped the dimness would feel intimate, like a cozy hideaway. The real problem, the one she hadn't anticipated, was the walls. Unadorned, peeling stretches of faded cream plaster that seemed to absorb no sound at all, bouncing back every syllable she uttered. Alone, the constant echo was unnerving. Posters and an old bookshelf only seemed to muffle the return, not diminish it. Instead of a distinct bounce, her words came back as a faint murmur, a ghostly whisper just behind her own voice. As the nights deepened, the phenomenon grew stranger. I often spoke aloud while studying, a trick to aid memory, but lately the echo wasn't instantaneous, it lagged. By midnight, the delay was noticeable, a full second. And in the oppressive stillness of 3 a.m., my own voice seemed to slither back from somewhere far beyond the confines of my small flat, as if returning from a lengthy crawl through a dark, unseen passage. The longer the pause, the more distorted my voice became. Still recognizably mine, yet sharper, laced with an unfamiliar edge, like the very air was twisting my words into veiled taunts. But the most unsettling development was the Ilara stared at Marcus's limp body, heavy between her and Liam. "But what are we supposed to do with him?" Liam flinched, his voice sharp. "With him, Ilara." "Not it. That's Marcus. He's gone, but he's not in it. Don't degrade him like that." "Don't degrade him like that." Okay, I understand, but..." A faint twitch rippled across Marcus's chest. "Why does he keep doing that?" Liam whispered, his gaze fixed on their friend. "It's the aura," Ilara replied, watching the sickly orange bloom seep from Marcus's mouth, down his fingers, and drip onto the cracked concrete of the porch, forming a sticky, iridescent puddle. "It stinks. He smells. Vile." Liam covered his nose, the air thick with a cloying sweetness, like rancid honeyed meat left too long in the sun. Flies buzzed, cleaning their tiny limbs, and ants marched in determined lines, siphoning the fluid back to their nest beneath the broken steps. A small, gruesome ecosystem had taken root around Marcus. "Do we just leave him here?" Ilara asked. "The town guards won't bother. He's beyond their jurisdiction. They don't concern themselves with the afflicted." Liam's voice was heavy with resignation. The world around him is already changing. A subtle shimmer emanated from Marcus's skin, distorting the colors of his tattered clothes. If we touch him too much, it'll change us further. Can you taste the candied flesh? Liam asked, swallowing hard. Alara saw a minuscule orange glimmer swimming in the white of his eye. Can you see the glimmers in mine? Alara replied, her gaze meeting his. He took a ragged breath, his body shuddering as his eyes tracked the familiar floaters darting across her vision. The same ones she now saw in him. We've been around him too long, Liam concluded. Do we send him off then, or let the insects consume him entirely? His kin won't care, Liam said, voice flat. But, you know I'm right. They stopped seeing him as their son the moment the aura touched him. Liam sighed, a tear tracing a path down his cheek as he gently stroked Marcus's cold face. He's weeping the orange muck, he whispered. Alara hugged Liam from behind. Come on, we have to send him off. If we don't, the aura will seep into us completely. And the insects, she gestured to the glowing orange ants. She gripped Marcus's arm, pulling his unresponsive weight towards the shattered doorway of the old outpost. He'll be taken. The Watchers will collect him. He would have preferred that to this. Can I stay here? Liam pleaded, sinking to the ground and wrapping his arms around his knees. I don't want to see that happen. Are you sure? Alara's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, please, just no. Okay, she murmured, her voice trembling. She turned the rusted handle, holding Marcus's inert hand. A soft, chittering click echoed from above. The Watchers' carapaces shimmered as they descended, their many eyes fixated on the body she presented. Long, slender arms, unnervingly delicate, carefully snagged Marcus's form as they flew with him into their silent, swirling swarm above the desiccated plain. Then Marcus screamed. Alara hoped Liam had covered his ears. Why did they always bring them back to life before consuming them? At least Marcus would know, in his final moments, that he was truly dead. A splash of orange splattered across Alara's face, warm and greasy on her hair. Marcus's arms and legs tensed, twitched, then writhed. Bones audibly crunched and broke, muscles ripped and tore. Gods, that's gonna happen to us, isn't it? Liam's choked cry reached her. I heard his. The warm aura slithered inside Alara. Yes, she answered, her voice empty. Ever since he was a small boy, Ethan had found solace and adventure in the depths of Blackwood Mill Pond. Its dark, cool waters, a source of eerie mystery for his younger sisters and brothers, were for him a sanctuary where every worry seemed to dissolve. One crisp autumn afternoon, just days before his 12th birthday, Ethan, feeling a surge of independence, decided the pond would be his alone. He traversed the winding, overgrown trail, sidestepping gnarled roots and pushing through thickets of wild berry bushes, until the familiar glimmer of the pond appeared through the trees. Diving into the invigorating chill, a sense of boundless freedom enveloped him. He surfaced, shaking water from his hair, and glanced toward the setting sun. His world, however, was a kaleidoscope of soft blurs. He'd left his spectacles by the bank, a forgotten detail in his haste. Then, a dark, indistinct shape materialized at the water's edge, seemingly swaying, moving closer. Hello? Ethan called out, his voice echoing faintly over the water. The shadowy form responded, its voice raspy, yet strangely persuasive. Hey lad, come here. I've got a treat for you. Some ice cream. A shiver, unrelated to the water's cold, ran down Ethan's spine. Ice cream? Out here, at the old mill pond, with twilight descending in an era where such luxuries were rare and certainly not found in the wilderness, without his glasses, the world was a menacing haze, and as darkness began to truly settle, he felt utterly isolated. The figure's eyes seemed to glow faintly in the encroaching gloom, or perhaps it was just a trick of his vision. It's right here, the voice urged. Come out, my boy, and claim your reward. Ethan's skin was puckering from the cold, his limbs growing heavy with fatigue and terror. Please, he pleaded, his voice trembling. Just let me go home, sir. But the stranger was relentless. "No, come, it's melting fast, but there's still plenty if you hurry." A low, unsettling whistle, followed by a tuneless song, sent another wave of panic through Ethan. He huddled on a half-submerged rock, every option feeling like a trap. The pond, once his sanctuary, now felt like a watery grave. Then, like specters emerging from the mists, more shadowy forms appeared, clad in what looked like pale, flowing robes. In a chilling chorus, they echoed the first, "Come to us, we have ice cream." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. His skin was parchment-like, his fingers numb. Tiny fish darted around his ankles, mirroring his own frantic fear. But amidst the terror, a spark ignited. He couldn't stay there and simply succumb. He had to face whatever awaited him on the shore. With a surge of newfound resolve, he hauled himself out, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. His first action was to retrieve his spectacles. As the world snapped into sharp focus, he glared at the gathering figures, his voice hoarse but firm. "What in heaven's name do you all want with me?" Suddenly, the clearing erupted in a dazzling explosion of light. A huge banner unfurled, emblazoned with, "Happy Birth, Day Ethan." His entire family, the neighbors from down the lane, Mr. Henderson the miller, Mrs. Gable from the general store. Everyone was there. They wore not robes, but festive white aprons, grins plastered across their faces. They held aloft ice cream buckets and a magnificent birthday cake. It was the most incredible surprise, the most joyous moment of his young life. And to this day, his family still laughs, recounting the tale of how Ethan almost froze in Blackwood Mill Pond rather than come out for his own surprise birthday party. Arthur had always lived by the clock. 5:30 a.m., the alarm blared, followed by the ritual of brewing black coffee potent enough to strip paint. Then, off to whatever dead-end job sustained him. For the past 6 months, that meant Abyssal Harvest Corp., a sprawling warehouse on the fringes of Blackwood Cove, Oregon, where the air eternally carried the scent of brine and slow decay. His task? Quality control tester for shrimp. Yes, he understood the incredulity. His job was to eat shrimp. Or, at least, what he believed were shrimp. The opportunity had seemed innocuous enough. An online advertisement promised, "No experience necessary, competitive pay, must have a strong stomach and no seafood allergies." Freshly laid off from a cannery, a casualty of automation, and with savings rapidly receding like the tide, Arthur figured, why not? The interview was a formality, a cursory meeting with a perpetually bored HR representative named Marlene, who simply slid a form and pen across the polished desk. "Sign here and you're in," she droned, her eyes glazed with routine. The warehouse itself was a colossal humming beast, a labyrinth of conveyor belts and frost-rimmed freezers. Arthur's station, the tasting lab, was a sterile white box, tucked away from the main floor's industrial roar. Fluorescent tubes hummed like trapped insects above a stark metal table and stool. A one-way mirror dominated one wall, and Arthur often felt the prickle of unseen eyes watching from its dark depths. Each day, he'd clock in, don a hairnet and gloves, and wait for the samples. The process was simple. A slot in the wall would open, and a tray would slide out, bearing 10 to 15 shrimp, peeled and deveined, sometimes raw, sometimes seasoned. Arthur would consume them one by one, diligently noting texture, flavor, and freshness on a digital tablet. Too salty? Mark it down. Rubbery? Flag it. An off-putting aftertaste? Report it. Then, the tray would retract, and another would appear. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It was monotonous, but at 25, an hour plus benefits, it was a king's ransom in Blackwood Cove. Initially, Arthur relished the work. Shrimp had always been a quiet indulgence. Cocktail shrimp at gatherings, shrimp scampi during long-forgotten date nights. The samples were consistently premium, plump, succulent, delivering that unmistakable briny snap of fresh catch. He'd chew slowly, savoring the burst of ocean flavor, the subtle sweetness beneath the salt. His notes were glowing, excellent firmness, perfect balance of umami, no fishy undertone. He even began dreaming of shrimp endless platters shimmering in a sea of crimson sauce. But around the third week, things grew peculiar. The textures shifted first. One batch felt off, too fibrous, almost stringy, as if tougher threads were woven within the flesh. He noted it, slightly chewy, possible overprocessing. The next day, a batch arrived, and one day a batch arrived, and a few seemed to possess a faint, lingering motility. Arthur blinked, attributing it to an optical trick, but no tiny, involuntary spasms rippled beneath the translucent shells, as if the creatures weren't quite deceased. He typed, fingers hesitating, residual nerve activity? From his cannery days, he'd seen fish twitch post-mortem, but shrimp were meant to be inert. He mentioned it to Marlene during their weekly check-in. Her voice, tinny through the intercom, dismissed it with a laugh. Oh, that's just our new sourcing. Deep sea varieties, fresher than fresh, keeps the flavor locked in. Arthur nodded, though a seed of doubt had been planted. Deep sea shrimp? Blackwood Cove's waters were shallow, stormy, not the abyssal depths Marlene implied. As weeks bled into months, the anomalies compounded. Some shrimp bore an iridescent sheen, like oil on water, shifting from blue to green to purple under the lab lights. Others tasted metallic, a coppery tang that clung to his tongue for hours. Headaches became a constant companion after shifts, pounding migraines that blurred his vision. At home, he'd collapse onto his couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling an unsettling sensation, as if something was subtly shifting beneath his own skin. One night, after sampling a particularly bizarre bat shrimp that popped like caviar when bitten, releasing a viscous, warm fluid, he dreamed vividly. He found himself submerged, not in water, but in an abyssal dreamscape. A vast, dark ocean trench unfolded around him, lit only by the ghostly dance of bioluminescent forms. These weren't fish. They were elongated, segmented things with too many glowing eyes clustered in rows, pulsing with an alien light. They beckoned. When Arthur instinctively reached out, one lashed onto his hand, its mouth parts unfurling with the horrifying grace of a blooming predator. He awoke gasping, his palm itching where nothing was present. The next shift, the trays came relentlessly, without pause. He barely finished logging one batch before another slid out. The shrimp were larger now, almost prawn-sized, with veins that pulsed faintly under their translucent flesh. He bit into one, and it squirted. Warm, not cold as it should have been. The flavor was richer, almost creamy, with an undercurrent of something earthy, like soil after rain, mingled with a faint taste of blood. He flagged it. Unusual temperature sample warm upon arrival. Flavor profile altered. Silence. No reply from the intercom. Usually, Marlene or someone would offer an immediate flimsy excuse. Just silence. His body had begun its insidious transformation. He noticed it in the mirror one morning. His skin grew paler, almost translucent, revealing a network of prominent blue veins, particularly stark around his neck and wrists. A relentless itch plagued him, driving him to scratch until skin broke. The headaches that had once merely throbbed now carried whispers, faint as static, bubbling up from an unknown source. At work, the one-way mirror sometimes fogged, as if a breath had been exhaled on the other side. He'd catch glimpses of movement in the reflection, shadows shifting when his gaze wasn't directly upon it. And the shrimp. God, the shrimp. Their appearance had changed. Not just texture or taste, but shape. Some had extra ridges along their tails, tiny protrusions like nascent limbs. Others bore what looked undeniably like eye spots, dark dots that seemed to track his movements as he lifted them to his mouth. He tried to quit once. After a shift, tablet clutched in shaking hands, he sought out Marlene's office. "This isn't right," he stammered. "The samples. They're not normal shrimp." She offered that same glazed smile. "Nonsense, Arthur. You're our best tester. Top scores every week. Here's a bonus." She slid an envelope across the desk, 500 cash. He took it. Bills, after all, demanded payment. That night, the itching intensified to a fever pitch. In the shower, he scratched his forearm raw, and something moved beneath the skin. A ripple, like a worm burrowing. He stared, water cascading over him, convinced it was a hallucination. But no, it happened again. A small bulge traveling up his arm, then vanishing. The dreams grew more frequent. always the Tretch, the glowing creatures. But now they spoke, not with voices, but with impressions. Hunger, ancient patience, a promise of belonging. He'd wake with the taste of salt on his lips, though he lived miles from the shore. The trays never stopped. He consumed hundreds a day, his stomach distending painfully, yet he never felt full. The shrimp were unmistakably alive now. They would curl when touched, their antennae, actual antennae, twitching. Some tried to escape the tray, scuttling toward the edge. He'd pin them with a fork, force them down. The taste was an exquisite agony, sweet decay, an electric vitality surging through him. His notes grew erratic. Sample exhibits motility. Recommend halt. Flavor induces euphoria. Potential contaminant. Eyes present. Multiple. Still, silence from the intercom. He began sneaking samples home, wrapped in napkins, hidden in his lunch bag. Under his kitchen light, magnified with a cheap loupe he'd bought online, the truth stared back. They weren't shrimp. Segmented bodies, jointed legs folded tight, mandibles tucked beneath. Larval forms, perhaps, of something vastly larger. Deep-sea horrors, harvested from trenches no submersible should ever breach. He spent nights searching online forums devoted to cryptic marine life, leaked documents from obscure oceanographic expeditions, whispers of benthic anomalies caught in trawls off the continental shelf, things that mimicked commercial species to infiltrate supply chains, parasites that rewrote hosts from within. The itching spread everywhere, his back, his scalp, between his toes. In the mirror, his eyes had changed, pupils slightly elongated, irises flecked with that same strange iridescence. One shift, the slot opened, but no tray emerged. Instead, a voice, at last, from the intercom. Not Marlene's. Deeper, resonant, like pressure waves in the crushing depths. You've adapted well. Integration phase complete. The lights in the lab dimmed, the one-way mirror cleared, revealing not an observation room, but darkness. An abyss lit by faint bioluminescence. Shapes moved beyond, massive, segmented, chillingly familiar. Arthur looked down at his hands. Without pain, the skin split, peeling back like a discarded shell. Beneath, something pale and jointed flexed, testing the air. Were they legs? Feelers? He couldn't quite tell. The tray arrived then, empty, an invitation. He understood. His job hadn't been to test shrimp. It was to become the vessel, to carry them inland, to spread the brood. The whispers clarified. We are the tide that returns. You are the bridge. Arthur stepped toward the slot. It widened, accommodating. The air grew cold, briny. As he crossed the threshold into the wet dark beyond the wall, he felt the last vestiges of the old Arthur slough away. Only hunger remained, the eternal, patient hunger. Back in the tasting lab, a new stool waited, a new tablet. Soon, another applicant would sign the form. Arthur was now the offering, awaiting the next unsuspecting soul.